I'm Chris Bridgman. I'm the development producer for Cumbria Arts and Culture Network, if you've not run across me before. Lovely to see you all. Tom, who is currently in Belfast, usually does these Friday morning calls and has largely set this up, but I'm in the big chair this morning, and very grateful for Amy's help making everything run smoothly, which I'm sure it will. Amy is Cumbria Arts and Culture Network. Amy is Cumbria Arts and Culture Network. And there she is again. Okay, right, we're going to start with Shipping Brow Gallery, which is going to be opening tomorrow in Maryport. And despite that, Dolly and Brian, who run the Shipping Brow Gallery, have very kindly agreed to come and talk to us about that today. I'm sure they've got lots of other things to worry about. We've got a bit of a PowerPoint, a presentation, some visuals, so we could start running that when Amy has let Lorna in. Yes, so I popped in a couple of images about the building itself, because it's quite an interesting historical thing itself, isn't it? The building that you're working in.
Yes, so it's a former Victorian pub that then became the Maritime Museum. That's being relocated into the old Christ Church, and the council offered an opportunity to lease the old Queen's Head, which we're turning into a gallery. Right,
and so we can see that there, obviously back in the day, and the road sloping down is the actual Shipping Brow, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, if we go on to the next slide, Amy. So this is the waterfront at Maryport we're looking at there.
Mm.
So then it became the Maritime Museum, but as you just said, that's relocated, hasn't it?
It is. They're in temporary accommodation in the town, and next year at some point they'll move into a refurbished Christ Church. So we took on the lease and put a proposal for an art gallery, which initially the council was rather sceptical, but quickly came on board, and we're now transformed.
Excellent. The next slide, I think, shows some work in progress. Well, this is the aim of the project.
Yes.
That's Brian on the right, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And on the left is Alan Roper, who's a Maryport graphic design artist who's done a lot of our work for the gallery.
Right. Created that kind of the main image there. Yes. Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah.
So was there a lot of work needed on the building when you took it over?
The answer is yes. Apparently the contract was for £500,000,
right?
Which we're quite surprised at. It's not that big a building, but hey ho, that's what the contractor asked for. A lot of it is because of health and safety and fire regulations. So they had to, because one of our main aims was to create a flat on the top floor to be able to offer an artist a year's residency. Therefore, there had to be a fire escape from the top floor,
right,
which meant building firewalls all over the place so that you could safely exit.
Right.
Which obviously also very much changed the inner layout of the building as compared to what it was when it was a maritime museum.
Yeah. And I guess obviously originally the Victorians weren't so concerned with these type of matters. If we move on to the next slide, Amy. So that's the exterior of the building being done up. Was it fundamentally structurally sound though?
Yes, the gable end facing the river, which is what you see there, there was some water ingress there for quite a long time, but that hopefully has been fixed.
Right. And I think the next slide shows Brian in action, making sure.
Right.
You always had a vital role to play in the refurbishment, making sure everything was level.
Yeah, no, that was borrowed spirit level to make sure the pictures are level.
Oh, right, excellent. So if we move on to the next slide as well. So what you're going to be putting in there, so there's the I'm assuming the freshly painted interior, looking out over the harbour front.
That's correct.
So the core of this is two collections of outstanding West Cumbrian artists, and one of whom might be familiar to a lot of people, and I suspect the other one, William Mitchell, whose work we're seeing there, possibly less so. Can you just explain how these collections came about?
Right. The William Mitchell collection was collected by a local man called Eric Alackley. Over the last 30 years, he just suddenly just had a passion for it. He even went so far as to he got 5 paintings, bid for them, and got them from Sotheby's in New York. So he built up this collection of William Mitchell. So William Mitchell paintings are really quite enormous, dominant pictures.
And then there are all or predominantly maritime subjects.
Well, a lot of he was obviously very had an eye commercially, that he painted a lot of Lake District ones.
Oh.
And but we haven't collected them at all. Very much our ethos is we want Maryport paintings that depict Maryport as it was or as it is, and therefore they are. We've got his maritime ones, his ones of Maryport Harbour, not his Lake District ones. So he says that he just lost interest. He lost his wife. He lost his parents. His parents had a bungalow. Therefore, he was moving into his parents' bungalow and to let his children have his house. And they wouldn't fit in his house. He's always wanted them displayed for local people to come and see. But when he wrote to the council some years ago, they turned around and said, not interested. So he was quite delighted when I said that I would sort of be able to buy them off him and display them in this new museum.
Right, excellent.
So that was William Mitchell. The other was, as I say, Percy Kelly.
Yeah, if we go on to the next slide, is that
sorry,
Kelly's on that one? Oh no, this is still. We'll come back to that maybe. That's celebrating the emergence. That's a local artist in there, Natalie Burns, who sometimes attends these calls. If we go on to the next slide, Amy.
Yes, there we are.
Percy Kelly. Yeah.
Right. So I came late to the first exhibition of at Castlegate House by Chris Wadsworth put on, and fell in love with Percy Kelly and started collecting, and have done so ever since. Obviously, again, my focus has largely been on his Maryport works, although I do have others as well. But for the gallery, we're specifically decided this is for showing Maryport works.
Right. Just a brief biography of Percy Kelly for anybody who's not familiar.
Dolly.
Okay, so Percy Kelly was born in Workington into, a working class family, and from a very young age had a prolific talent for drawing. He was quite a character. He painted and drew constantly, but became very obsessed with not selling any of his work. People would, beg to buy paintings off him. I think Melvyn Bragg was somebody who wanted to buy his work. So he sadly died in poverty in Norwich, and his work has since become highly collectible. It's particularly fascinating because it depicts West Cumbria and the industrial landscape, and it's something we feel quite passionate about. It's not the Lake District, it's not pretty scenes, but it's very redolent of this area.
Absolutely, a character of West Cumbria, indeed. And so this is a collection that you have built up, Brian, since encountering him at Castlegate Gallery.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So that's going to be a core element within the shipping brow. If we move on to the next slide, Amy, there is another splendid Percy Kelly.
Although that one
Is Parton?
It's Parton.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not Maryport, is it?
But
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
West Cumbria.
Yeah, but no, that's not in the gallery.
Oh,
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
sometime in the future, but that's not in the gallery.
Okay,
because it's not Maryport.
Okay. And the next slide. Right, these are some more William Mitchell. Tell us a bit more about William Mitchell, because I think he's probably less familiar than Percy Kelly would be to a lot of people.
Yeah, so William Mitchell was an Irish migrant who arrived in Maryport about 1840 as a teenager and was working in Graslet in an engine factory painting railway carriages for the Maryport Carlisle Railway. He rose to become foreman painter. He eventually quit the day job and became a full-time maritime artist, and his work is now very collectible. The late crime writer P.D. James, when she died some years ago, one of her paintings sold in London was a William Mitchell of Maryport Harbour. And his paintings can now be found in America, Australia, Canada. It's the 200th year of his birth, so we're doing a project with Maryport schools inspired by William Mitchell paintings, and we're having an exhibition week commencing 27th of November in St Mary's Church in Maryport. And our gallery artist Felix has been into schools with artist Celia Burbush, helping to illustrate William Mitchell pictures. So it's quite an exciting time to be showcasing this collection. Yeah. There's also a blue plaque next Wednesday being erected in Maryport at the home of William Mitchell, courtesy of Maryport Town Council.
Oh, terrific. Well, that's led us very nicely on to some of the other aspects of the Shipping Brow enterprise. So you described it as also it's a sort of community resource. It isn't simply a gallery, and there's a shop as well. So just tell us a bit more about the other aspects of the operation.
Well, we're very fortunate in having a part-time gallery manager and a volunteer coordinator who are both retired teachers, and we're wanting to produce quite an exciting programme for local schools, to have visits to the gallery, to explore the paintings, to meet our artist in resident Felix, who has a small studio space on the ground floor. We'd also like to do some outreach programs to community centres, care homes, where we take some of our artwork and perhaps give talks about the origins of the art. So we're very keen, to have art for everybody. And we want the gallery to be a presence for residents as well as visitors.
Excellent. And you mentioned Felix. If we go on to the next slide, I'm not sure we're on to there. Tell us a bit about Felix. Oh, there we are. That's a splendid view of a William Mitchell painting. And the next slide. Right. Also a ship, but a very different style. This is Felix Butterwick. So tell us about the residence program and Felix himself.
Right. So the idea actually was Dolly's to have this idea of having an artist in Maryport, and the council was very good at it. Did take up that idea and create this flat. Although it would have been accommodation in Victorian times, the top floor, because there had been various coins found in the floorboards and things. So we advertised late spring for this artist in residence, had 19 applications, shortlisted it down to 5, and we appointed Felix. So Felix is a graduate of Glasgow, but actually comes from Nottingham.
So kind of midway in between.
So midway in between. So he's had a very difficult beginning, because originally we were constantly told until about June that it was all going to be the refurbishment was going to be complete by the end of June. And then there was going to be, then we were given a 2-week delay because of the gas supply wasn't going to be connected till 14th of July. And then after that, it just another hiccup after another hiccup. So poor Felix was expecting to move in on the 1st of September, but we didn't actually get possession of the building until about 3 weeks ago. So luckily, Dolly and I have 2 houses, and so he moved into Dolly's house, and so at least had somewhere to stay in Maryport that to call home. Yeah. But he's much, much happier now that he's down in the gallery painting and already ruining the floor with paint.
We're pleased to say.
Excellent. Yes. I'm sure many people will recognise the building process experience. If we just move on to the next slide, it's another one of Felix's, I think. So what's he going to be doing in Maryport for a year?
Essentially, our aim is that it gives him a year to develop his art and to develop, to see whether he can make a career out of being a full-time artist. Or so, our idea is he hasn't got any financial pressures to produce things that are saleable, but to sort of develop his own work. And then I suppose, are they saleable? So he will be selling through the gallery or online as well. And hopefully by the end of it, he will have got a career path. Yeah.
And you said he's been doing some work in schools.
He already has with the Celia Burbush. Celia's leading the Mitchell project, and he's going in as well. And hopefully, he's the rest of us are obviously older, but he can hopefully relate more to children. And he's very, very enthusiastic and personable. And the feedback we've got so far is he's been a great success.
Excellent. Let's move on. I think there's one more of image of from Felix. And so the gallery opens officially tomorrow. That's you're all set for that, are you?
Well, we're going back down there after this to feverishly tidy up the ground floor. The first floor exhibition is complete. On the ground floor, we also have for 4 weeks a solo exhibition by Sarah Reed. And Sarah approached us back in April or May when we thought we were opening in the summer. And thankfully, she's held on for us. So we've got a large number of works on the ground floor by Sarah for exhibition and also for sale. And Sarah will be coming tomorrow. We held a competition with the schools earlier in the year, again based on William Mitchell. We had 3 prize winners from infant schools, and we've invited the 3 prize-winning children, and they're going to come to the gallery tomorrow and cut the ribbon. So we're also off to feverishly hunt for some red ribbon this afternoon as well. So that's 4 o'clock, the official opening, and then we're open to the public from Sunday. And our opening hours will be opening Wednesday to Sunday, 11 to 4, and still recruiting volunteers to help us.
Right, splendid. Thank you very much. I'm going to throw the floor open because I'm sure people will have questions, and I know that. Right, yes, there's a brief glance of the logo and the website, but I'm sure you can find that and pop that in chat. Yes, there's a couple of questions that have come up in chat. Tom said, how has the gallery been welcomed in Maryport? I know there was a line something like, we need a swimming pool, not a bloody art gallery, which was somebody's reaction.
Well, so, we started off on a wave of enthusiasm, particularly when locals heard about our Mitchell collection, which is very well known about. Then when the new council, Cumberland, took over, there had been a proposal to put a swimming pool in Maryport. When the new council came in, they immediately announced plans to scrap the swimming pool as it was not sustainable. And this meant there was a bit of a backlash on social media. And that led to me walking down the high street one day and a local pulling over his car from the other side of the road, winding down his window and shouting, "Maryport needs a swimming pool, love, not an art gallery." And he'd driven off before I could get a rude hand gesture delivered. So that was a little blip. We had another little blip when the beautiful blue colour that we have was a palette, free paint provided by Maryport Business Group to brighten up the town. We were offered this palette and we thought, that's a lovely blue. And so the minute that went on, there was another tsunami of comments on social media. Oh, is this awful? Why didn't it stay white? So apart from that, we're quite buoyant.
Well, you can't please all of the people all of the time.
No, exactly.
It does sound like a spend, and it sounds like it's going to contribute in so many ways to the community. Do stick your hand up if you would like to ask a question of Brian and Dolly. What's your so just tell us a little bit more about Sarah Reed, who you mentioned has got a first temporary exhibition there.
Yeah, so Sarah and Martin Reed are painters with a studio in Penrith, and we've been to visit them. But when we set up social media accounts for the gallery on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, Sarah does pastel, sort of Solway scenes in beautiful pastel. And she approached us to say, was there any chance of a solo exhibition? And we leapt at the opportunity. Our thought is to have 4 weeks of solo, then mix it up with a series of local artists. So Sarah has been keeping her collection, and she came through last week with Martin to put the collection up, and it looks wonderful. So we hope she'll be in the gallery sometime over the next 4 weeks to meet visitors as well.
Excellent. Well, I know the sectoral online meetings that we've been having, the visual arts and crafts group has certainly been raising the issue of more opportunities and building audiences for contemporary art in Cumbria, and this is plainly going to contribute to that. Tom, you've got
Sorry, I've got all sorts of questions, so I'm going to keep them to two. So I've asked one already. My second question is just, why are you doing this, Dolly and Brian? What is your motivation? What on earth are you doing this for?
We ask ourselves. We're both well retired and can do without hassle.
Aren't you a retired medical person, Brian? I can't remember.
Yes. Yeah, I retired 5 years ago. Oh, getting on
why are you doing
now.
this? Why are you opening a gallery in deepest, darkest West Cumbria?
Sorry, I'm going to object to that. We calling us the deepest, darkest West Cumbria. I mean, I guess it's like a lot of people. I mean, like this Eric Gallatley and his William Mitchells. You develop a love of a painter, and you begin to build up a collection. And then after a while, you begin to wonder, what am I going to do with it? What's it for? And just because, the opportunity came that we could do something about it, and thought, well, let's go for it. I mean, it's been a lot more work than we anticipated, but it'd been lovely if the council had sort of said, look, we've got an art gallery, can we borrow your painting? But hey ho, they asked us to run it and then charge us a lease, of course.
Yeah, so over the last 5 years, we've done quite a lot of work in community arts festivals in Maryport. One about Percy Kelly and Norman Nicholson, one about migration in Victoria and Maryport featuring William Mitchell, another one-day festival about the UK's first black policeman who was in Maryport. We also then did a project about Bill Peascod, who was a Maryport miner turned rock climber turned artist, and we actually commissioned a film about Bill Peascod available on YouTube. Our Peascod Festival was cancelled due to COVID, but all of those projects involved working with local schools, and they were just so enthusiastic. And, and as I said to Brian, for young people, it's about aspiration, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Jonathan said, we enjoyed the Percy Met Norman event at the settlement, and he asks, are the Maryporters still active?
I was formerly one of the founding members, but have gone on to other things. I think the group is still there.
Just explain what Maryporters are.
So it was a town team group. And at the time, myself and my late friend, Jan McTaggart, were part of the group, and we set up the When Percy Met Norman festival, and wanted to do more, but the town teen group were more focused on small local events. So I think the group is still there, but not particularly active.
I'm going to let you go very shortly because I know you've got plenty to do. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying I will be getting down to the gallery as soon as I can. It sounds like a wonderful resource. And,
thank you.
You know, plenty to enjoy. That the range of work from Mitchell to Kelly to completely contemporary art is extremely appealing. I can take another question if anybody wants to shoot a hand up, but otherwise we'll let Dolly and Brian go with grateful thanks for talking to us this morning. And Stefan, are you putting your hand up? You've got a question. Go.
Yeah, just after the experience you've described for Felix, are you planning to roll that opportunity on and create an opportunity each year? Is that the plan for a resident artist? Or
It is, yes.
Does that, I mean, can you do that regardless, or does it require some funding? How does it work economically?
Well, I mean, it's at the moment it's self-funded, but we are. I mean, we have had some grants, and we would look. In some ways, we were going to do more in terms of grant applications around this time, but there's been so much work involved in setting up the gallery and all the various complications that our energy. Well, partly we've just been 5 weeks in Australia, and you're getting back just a week ago. So, and we've got our manager is very, very part-time. So she's been entirely concentrated on getting the gallery up and going rather than looking for grants. But you know, it will be funded for at least 3 years. So that will be 3 artists.
It's marvelous. And I'll just let Amy put in her 2 penneth.
It was just on behalf of Mel in chat, who was asking about the gallery's opening hours.
Yeah, so we'll be opening 11 to 4, Wednesday to Sunday.
Sunday inclusive, yes.
Yeah.
Marvelous. Okay, well, the very best of luck for the opening, and I say I think you've got a confirmed audience from those present now to get across.
Thank you.
Lots of love in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us, and all the very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank
Do
you.
stay for as long as you like, but I know you've got things to do. So, yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Right, now we are going to move on to talk to Alexis Johnson, who some of you may have seen at the quarterly meeting that we had in Kendal at the brewery a little while ago, which was looking at the whole area of co-creation processes. Alexis is Mrs. Co-creation, basically. Just to give my voice a rest and to give you all a break from hearing me waffling, there's a little film that we can play from a project that Alexis did in Ireland a little while ago, and Amy is very efficiently swooping onto that. It might take a little minute to get it running. I muted myself. So Alexis, what was that all about?
That was that was co-creation. That was, so basically, I mean, I can start from the beginning, but really that was just to show a group of people. I think it was a group of 20 artists, and we got 20 people from the community to come together over 1 week. We made it intensive because it does everybody's heads in, so it's good fun. And everybody created a production from scratch. And so what you do is you throw some skills in, then you get people to co-create what it's going to be, and everybody gets a role and they're responsible for their role, and then just suddenly magic happens. It just suddenly comes together. And the whole idea with that is to create a non-hierarchical frame for people to work together with. That's the whole idea, and we're not very good at it. I remember on that project there were a few tantrums because people like to have their creative control, but the idea with co-creation is everyone has creative control of their section, the part that they choose to be part of, and then it all comes together in this sort of very strange synergy. Although I remember that the choreography was pretty messy.
And that they were, am I right in saying that was an international bunch of artists that were brought in? You were working with local people, but the artists came from all over the place. Yeah,
and so I've been doing that sort of model for a little while. You know, you become a bit of a one-trick pony. So I've been doing that since about 2015, and it was when we were part of this little place called Europe, and we could get European funding. And so you were able to write to Creative Europe and say, "Dear Sir, Madam, could you fund us to do some co-creation magic, please?" And then what you do is you'd get your partners from different parts of Europe, and all the art. So it involves a lot of flights, getting people to come together. But then what you do is you connect them to the local artists, the local scene, and the local community. And in doing that, the international artists become like a mirror to the people locally, so that they can just see how good they are and special they are. And so yeah, that was that model. So I was doing that with Walk the Plank, and then I've been doing it just independently since. And we can keep doing it, we just have to be a little bit more pirate and pretend that we live in Ireland. So it's that sort of thing.
You mentioned Walk the Plank there. A lot of people may have come across them, but just mention they're Manchester, well, strictly Salford based, aren't they? Just
so I started working with Walk the Plank. I came up, I'm from here. I lived in London for a very long time, far too long. I lived on a boat in London and made a lot of co-creation projects in London. I always said I was like bringing a little bit of northern community to to fragmented communities that just needed to gel and connect. And then I moved back up north, and I've always run my own art organization. It's been big, it's been small, I just keep moving it around according to what works. But when I moved back up north, I thought I need to reconnect in to the scene here in the Northwest. So the best way to do that was with Walk the Plank. And they're a fantastic organisation. They've got sort of like tentacles that run across the whole of the north and do outdoor art across all areas of spectacle. And they come from the model of, they do come from a model of co-creating. It comes from John Fox's Welfare State International model from the 70s that came from community arts. And then it's been basically John Wassell and Liz Pugh, and it's Liz now because John's retired to live on a boat and pops and visits every so often. And so they're just, I mean, like they perform miracles, to be honest, with what they can achieve. But it's all achievable by artists coming together and co-creating, and it is that type of model where it's just drawing different people in with different skill sets, and then they make these productions with Walk the Plank. And so it's a really good umbrella. It is very pirate. But then I've been doing more. I work independently more recently.
I once helped paint part of the Fitzcarraldo. They had that, I think it was originally a Norwegian ferry that Walk the Plank operated and ran around and did exciting things in.
It was a fishing trawler.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, and so that was a theatre ship. Yeah.
Yes.
I like the painting.
Yeah. Just, presumably at the age of 11, you didn't say, when I grow up I want to be a co-creating artist. How do you kind of get into this in the first place?
Yeah, I did it from the age of 7. Some of you heard my daisy chain story. Stefan's sick of it probably. So, you just look around you and you just think, this isn't right. I mean, as a child you've got fresh eyes, haven't you? You just look around and go, why is everyone competing with each other? I couldn't really cope with things like sports day and tests at school. I just couldn't understand why I just kept saying to the teachers, we've all got different knowledge and things that we all like doing. Why can't we all come together and do things? It just, the whole system didn't seem quite right for me. So it's been, I think it's been an urge. I don't think we're there yet. I mean, I've been doing some really, really hardcore co-creation projects recently. There's this idea of co-creation and then real co-creation. You go, but is it real?
What's the difference?
Co-creation is about a non-hierarchical process, and we are not very good at it. When we're not thinking about it, we do it naturally. We're super cooperators. Human beings are able to build cities and make amazing things together. We are super cooperators, but we've got it in our minds that we have to work in competition with each other. So I'd say probably like 85% of the time we're actually cooperating all the time, possibly even more, but we're just not aware of it. And so the difference between co-creation and real co-creation is it's a spectrum of power. And what we do is, because of the system, because of the structure in which we work and being brought up, we can take power. We do that, especially as creative artists. It's important because we need to have creative control and an aesthetic sensibility. But we also are very guilty of giving our power away as well. And so what's really difficult is to find that balance where we're not taking too much and we're not giving too much, and we often give more than take, and it's just trying to find that equilibrium. So true co-creation, it's sliding scale, and sometimes we get it really good and sometimes we really mess it up, but it's really important to mess it up because that's the only way that we can really learn, because we have to practice this, because it's very difficult. You can imagine that film, you've got 20 artists, international artists, very established, very talented artists, all with a particular way of working. It's like hearing about the gallery and changing the gallery color to blue. It's very difficult for people to take that change on. It takes a lot of opening up, and so that's why it's so difficult to find that balance.
Now I'm going to ask Amy to run some slides which show some images from previous work, so you can maybe talk us through a few of these projects. I know this first one was recreating Passport to Pimlico, which some of the older ones among us may have come across, an Ealing comedy film from the 1950s, I guess it was made, was it probably? And then you remade it in Pimlico, is that right?
Yeah, so this came with co-creation. You're bringing a very large, diverse group of people together who are all very, very different, with lots of differences of opinions and belief systems, etc., etc. So what you want to do is you want to find a common ground. And this came about, I'd worked with the Institute of Contemporary Arts. I was one of their directors there. And then I left and became independent, but I carried on working with Westminster City Council. I carried my relationship on with them. And the Westminster City Council had said to me, we've got a problem in South Westminster. You wouldn't think there'd be any problems in Westminster, but it really does have some very deep-rooted sort of social issues. And it's actually one of the 7th most poorest you know, sort of like highest rated poverty in London, which you wouldn't really expect. So I learned this process from some artists that I'd commissioned from Brooklyn in America. When I worked at the ICA, they basically said you go onto the streets and you just listen to people and listen to the space, listen to the place, listen to the people, ask questions, find out who the key people are within that community, who are those linchpins that the community trust, and then find out what they need. And so I've done that process ever since. It was the best, I think, advice I'd ever been given. And so I'd gone and talked to and listened to people in Pimlico, and I'd found that the problem was in Pimlico, it was a problem with youth gangs, but they weren't youth gangs. They were literally young people just hanging out on corners. But what had happened is the issue had escalated because the elderly people were scared of them. They thought that they were dangerous. So I thought, okay, so the simple solution here is let's build a relationship between the young people and the old people. Let's get it so that they can know each other's name when they walk down the street, so they don't have to be scared of each other. Young people at that point were very interested in like doing filmmaking and things like that. So I thought we'll bring some technology in to make it attractive to the young people. We'll make it a film. And with the older people, it's like, okay, Passport to Pimlico, that works with their generation. It fits with the whole sort of like, let's go back to our heritage. But from there, it just escalated. I did this from 2009 through to 2012, and we did it as part of the Cultural Olympiad. And in the end, there were 1,600 people involved in this. And what happened was they declared Pimlico independent. It went through many, many phases. We got to that point of the elderly people and the younger people being able to walk down the street and say each other's name. And then we ran community activities where the elderly people baked cakes for the younger people and the younger people held tea parties for the older people. We really made able to make that connection happen. It was very, very deep. And then it just, the whole idea of becoming independent. And what I loved was the fact that this was in the centre of power. This is Parliament. The MPs were walking past their banners. And not only that, people created alter egos. They created a queen, they created a prime minister, they created a chancellor, they created a clown. They created lots and lots of different characters that would just go around the streets. And the best ones were that they created passport control, and they created costumes, and they'd jump on the red buses and they would ask to stamp people's passports. Now you can imagine in Westminster you've got a lot of tourists, so they're stamping real tourist passports who were going up and down Westminster, because Pimlico, the stretch of it, like I say, is actually where the House of Parliament is. It was hysterical, honestly. It was so funny. It was like a complete takeover of the people across the streets. Tate invited us in, so we made the Central Hall their HQ, so that they could then coordinate these operations of stamping people's passports. So it was that idea. We did lots of performances as well. We made it into a film. It became lots and lots of different art forms. But the idea with that is that it's that thing of you're making the art and then the art becomes the life. Yeah. You're making an art piece about being a republic and getting everybody to come together because of that kind of wartime spirit where everybody works together, and then it became life. So that was kind of what we were doing, and it's that sort of little.
It's a really powerful demonstration of creative artistic activity having huge kind of wider social impacts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next slide.
I'll touch on these a little bit less briefly, but this was another one. This was the Olympic Committee that then asked me to do something for 100 young people across the whole of London with the V&A. And again, it was a co-creation project, and it was like, okay, so these are young people. They identified them as young people. They're from foyers, so they're young people who don't have have been brought up in the care system, and it's that intermediary point of not being in care anymore and having to be an adult on their own without any support structure. So what you've got is almost kind of the opposite of the problem in Pimlico, because what you've got is a group of young people who become each other's family. And so what you're wanting to do is, I suppose, create a channel for that family to be able to express themselves, but potentially even earn money and make a living in the future. So 100 young people working across, again, all different art forms. And what we did was we used the V&A collection as the common ground. The V&A collection has a really lovely performance collection. It's hidden. It was stolen from the Theatre Museum that closed down in Covent Garden. And they've got a collection of Diaghilev and the Bally Roos. And the Diaghilev method of making art is co-creation. It was all these amazing early modernist artists coming together from across Europe and co-creating performance. So we were able to use that as a model, and then these young people created performances, exhibitions. They curated the work themselves, they made the work themselves, and we based it on that whole Diaghilev and the Bally Roos model. One of the really interesting outcomes that came from this was that we were given that, that sort of you're in the museum or through till midnight, and you get to be in that space and own that space. And the young people sort of went around and really engaged. It's always about having a communication with the space, with the location. They really engaged with the museum, but the curators had told them that, every continent was represented in the V&A, and they went round and they said, there's no Africa. And so I said, well, let's go and talk to the curators and tell them that there's no Africa. So the young people created a little committee and did a presentation and said, there's no Africa continent in the V&A. Why is that missing? And the curators went, we didn't know. We didn't realise it was missing. So again, it's that really important thing of like bringing fresh eyes in, hiding in plain sight, coming from a sort of fresh perspective. So yeah, that was called Blue Train after one of the Diaghilev.
Let's move on to the next slide, because we want to touch on what you're going to be doing for CACN before we finish. Where's this? So
this one's Manchester Day. I just thought I'd throw it in. I'm the person holding the star on the left-hand corner, and that's just a really nice model, because you co-create with the community for about 6 weeks. You just do a few evenings with them. This was with the community group Simply Cycling, and they basically say, what do you want to communicate on the street in Manchester Day, and celebrate your community group and what you've achieved this year. And they wanted to bring fun in. This was like after the bomb, and what they wanted to do was to bring joy and fun. So they made it sort of fireworks and kind of fun displays. But again, that's another example of co-creation on the streets.
Next slide, please, Amy.
And then this is an example of how it escalates. I've been commissioned by British Council to work with Grey Eye, which is a fantastic organisation based in London that works with artists with disability, to then share their co-creation model with a circus group in Brazil, in Rio. And it was literally just a project where we'd worked for about a year, just literally. It was part of the cultural Olympiad handover from the UK over to Rio, and we'd just basically been presenting the co-creation model over in Brazil and creating a really nice piece that would then get performed in the circus tent. Then all the money disappeared for the opening ceremony of the Paralympic Games. In fact, they were at that point saying that they were going to close the Paralympic Games. And then suddenly we got a phone call, and what had been a small community circus performance suddenly took centre stage and became part of the opening ceremony, actually a crucial part of the opening ceremony. And this guy here who's balancing in the chair, he'd only been doing circus performance for just that small amount of time that we had met with him. these were artists these were people from the community who'd never considered becoming professional performers, and now they're professional performers. And the nice thing with the circus organisation in Rio is that what we did was we separated the disability group. They've integrated the disability group. They've taken it to the next stage.
Next slide, and this is Denmark, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Sweden, but this is the last slide, so I'll shut up quickly. But I put this in because this was our lockdown project, and I know that the network here met over the lockdown, and this is what I was doing with the artists in the Northwest and some of the international artists that I'd worked with. We created a regular online network like you have, and then I got given the opportunity to curate an art festival for the 400th anniversary in Gothenburg, and so it just made sense to put the two together. And so the artists on the network then co-created a whole load. We did 17 productions. They co-created 17 productions for the opening, not the opening, this wasn't an opening ceremony, this was the anniversary of Gothenburg's 400 years, and we again took the common ground by looking at history and different artists, again different art forms. The little horse on the right is by visual artists, and then obviously we've got performers, we've got costume makers, it's across the board. And that was everybody co-creating productions from a network from Zoom.
So I think what's plain from the various projects you talked about is there are a whole range of different models or approaches to co-creation. It can be co-creation between existing professional artists. It can be a community of non-artists, and it can be a mix of the two. Yeah,
absolutely, because it's about people coming together, and it's according to what your agenda is, what your aim, what you know is needed, what the needs and wants are, as to what you want to do. Because I have to say that co-creating between artists is more difficult than co-creating with community, and co-creating with young people is a doddle, it's a joy. And co-creating with children is just blissful. Not, there are different levels of resistance. And so that's actually why it's quite nice to mix the two, because if you bring some children in, suddenly the artists might be more willing to co-create with each other. So sometimes there's a value in blending groups. But again, it's to do with the co-creators. Okay, so the other thing, just the last bit really there, is that the co-creators are not just the people, but they are the place as well. And that's really, really important. I mean, I'm saying the word location at the moment because place is such a difficult word to use. It's got so many meanings. But literally going and communicating with that location. So like, that's what we had this morning with Maryport. You suddenly got transported to Maryport. You saw its history, you saw its building, you've got its whole maritime connection, you've got its industrial, heartland. Suddenly it's communicating to you, and that's where the art comes from. And then you make it place specific. That's what I do.
And Amy has just put in chat the details of the workshop that you are going to be running for us. So there's an opportunity for people to spend a whole day with you looking at co-creation with communities, which is coming up on the 30th of November at Reged. Just tell us very briefly what people could expect if they booked onto that. What are you going to be doing that day?
So we'll do some case studies, we'll talk through, but I don't want to be talking all the time. I'll do a little bit of theory, because there is theory in terms of the design architecture of a co-creation project, and there are pitfalls. Like I say, it's the slow way, and it's also potentially the way of getting everybody. It creates a sort of like a pressure cooker, and it goes boom. But then suddenly everything changes, and it's quite remarkable what can be achieved. So we'll talk through some of that. I thought it'd be quite nice to do some open forum, so you can put your own questions in, or you can put your own examples of projects in, and we can have discussions around what you've done. And I thought we'd have a little opportunity to have a play doing our own co-creation activity, and then dissect whether it's co-creation or co-creation. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Sound like a potentially endless circle. Splendid.
It is, it's a circle.
We're very close to finishing time. I can take maybe one question, and then I just want to go to Helen Petts, who's going to be featuring on this call next week, and she can give us a taste of what's coming up there. But any questions for Alexis? I'm just looking in the chat. Stefan?
Probably not so quick, actually, but just picking up on Dolly and Brian. How do you cope with people saying we need a swimming pool, not an arts project?
It's really interesting they said that, because I did an art project where I consulted all the community in Tottenham. I gave them all little postcards to write to each other in the future. And the two things that they wanted was connection. They all did pictures of stick people holding their hands. And the other thing they wanted was a swimming pool. There is something very deep in the human psyche to need a swimming pool. So you need, the art creates the connection. So we're delivering on that. And then what you do is you just bring one of those sort of like swimming pools that you can bring in for the summer outdoors in, and get sponsorship to do that. That's what I did.
Brilliant. Yes, and picking up with the Manchester connection, of course, there's a splendid Victoria Baths in Manchester, which I don't think functions as a swimming pool in any sense now, but has become a huge kind of artistic community hub. Helen, you're going to be talking to Tom next week. What are you going to be talking about?
I'm going to be talking with Aaron Tan, who is a PhD student at the University of Cumbria, and we're both talking about our work in response to the Chinese artist Li Wanqie, who lived in Banks, just outside Brampton. And he died a few years ago. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to do this. I haven't got the dates. But he ran the LYC Museum from 1974 to 1983, which was a big community arts project that did visual arts workshops, poetry workshops, whatever, lots of different sorts of workshops. He is now quite a famous artist in that his work is collected and it's sold for quite a lot of money. His work's in Tate Modern, but he's not really known in Cumbria, and that's why I wanted to do this, because last week a really big important exhibition about him, his gallery, and the other artists who showed in his gallery opened at Kettle's Yard Gallery in Cambridge. And I'm sorry it's not in Cumbria, but we are, we're taking part in it, and we wanted to tell everybody about this brilliant exhibition and about what a brilliant man he was.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to that. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm going over the strict hour limit that Tom always keeps to. So huge thanks to Alexis and to Dolly and Brian, and see you down at the Shipping Brow at some point, I'm sure, and do book on to Alexis's session at Reg Ed with lunch, and lovely to see you all. It'll be back in the even safer hands of Tom next week. Have a good week.